Hello, guys. Hello, guys. I was just waiting for that swirly thing, growing live, and the dot dot dot. Then you're live, and I wait for that. So there's a little bit of a period where there's like me just looking at the screen like an idiot. That's why we're gonna talk about It Chapter Two for movie theater reviews. The first one I did through Fan Recommends. This one I saw in theaters a little over a week ago. I'm sorry it took so long for me to do this. It just life. Yeah, we're gonna just go over the quick base. This year, 2019. It's rated R. It's about 2 hours and 49 minutes long. It's a long movie. It has 7.0 out of 10 on IMDb with about 71,000-ish user votes and 58% on Metacritic without 52 critics. It stars Jessica Chastain, who was in Zero Dark 30, and James McAvoy, who was in Split. It's directed by Andy Muschietti, who did Mama and also the first It movie. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has 63% by critics and 79% by audiences, with 331 critics and 35,000-ish audience people. And the critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is It Chapter 2 proves bigger doesn't always mean scarier for horror sequels, but a fine cast and faithful approach to the source material keeps this follow-up afloat. So, yeah, pretty much the thing with this movie is that I'm not gonna lie, I think I like the first one a little bit better. Not to say this one's bad. This one's not bad. I will say I never seen the original It movie with Tim Curry. I heard great things about him in it, not so much the rest of the stuff. So I can't really say whether it's better or worse other than what I know happened, because I have seen like online reviews of it, the original, so I kind of have an idea, but I'm not going to really go full out on that comparison. I will say, based on those reviews, it seemed like the adult portion sucked while the kid portion was better, and I agree here. Although I will say the adult portion has done a whole lot better in this than what it looked like in the It movie, in the original It movie. I will say that. Let's start with the basics. Acting. The acting's great in this, just like the original It movie. There's not really everyone's casted right. It's like the critics' consensus is. Now, when the first It movie came out, I didn't see it in theaters when it came out. I saw it just recently, but it was huge. I mean, it was like everywhere. And this movie, I feel like, even though 2 years for a sequel is more than reasonable for movies, it almost feels like this movie just came out too late. I felt like this movie should have come out a year later, in all honesty. I think they should have done both of them at the same time and aired them back to back like Avengers Infinity War Endgame style. I think that's what they should have done, because it felt, by the time this came out, I was like, man, this felt like it took its fucking time. But yeah, acting's great. Direction's the same as the first one. Cinematography I still think is great in this one as well. The special effects, they rely a bit more. I feel like they rely a little bit heavier on the CG in this one. I feel like I felt like this one might have had a bigger budget. So in the original, I feel like they use their CG a bit more cleverly, while this one they had a bigger budget, so they kind of did the stuff that they either decide wouldn't quite fit the original, the first chapter one, or didn't really have time or the budget to. So, because this movie does cut back to the kids, it does have flashbacks to that. So, and this movie is long, and in all honesty, I didn't feel the length, but there were a specific parts where I'm like, okay, they could have cut this out. They could have easily cut this out. It would have been fine. And here's the one thing that I think this one missed. This one, I don't know if it's funnier, but I will say the sense of dread, I didn't feel it as strongly in this one than I did chapter 1. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that that all that shit's happening to kids. And kids I like, great likable kids who are going through challenges in their own life without the fucking Pennywise motherfucker fucking with them. And there was this sense of dread, like I don't think I might talk a little bit about chapter 1. I don't want to give a lot away, but just certain scenes with the kids, like each kid, like Pennywise kind of teases each kid before they meet up through a certain thing that relates to them, and those were filled with dread. Like there was one like kid in the library. I mean, that scene, my God, that was intense. For me, that was intense. I mean, a lot of those scenes were just beautifully done, great horror that I haven't really felt since there's not a lot of horror movies that get me like that. There isn't. Like the only other one that did it, this one almost competes with the original Evil Dead, in my opinion. I think the one flaw with that movie, though, is the tone was too inconsistent. This movie, the tone wasn't always handled right. This movie, the tone I would say is more consistent, but the horror is. But they went the other way. Instead of making it more horror driven, they made it more kind of, not funny, but more kind of quirky horror. It kind of has an old school Stephen King vibe where all the cast is like grown adults. Kind of like one of those movies like Cujo or a Stephen King horror movie where all the central characters are grown ass people. That's kind of from the 80s or whatever. That's kind of the vibe I got of it. And I think I will say Pennywise this time around, he's still Pennywise. I did read some trivia online that said he's only in like 10 and 50 minutes on screen. I'm like, in the movie that's almost 3 hours, that's not a lot of screen time for the big villain. I mean, I don't know how much screen time Pennywise had in the first one, but that first movie was shorter, and I think he had more screen time in that one. But yeah, I do love the casting, and I will give Jay Ryan, who plays grown-up Ben. He's in the show. He was in a show of Beauty and the Beast, which was a remake of a TV show in the 80s that had Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton. That show was great, and that Beauty and the Beast show, that was awesome. I loved that. I watched that with my mom and sister, and that was very good. And he played the Beast, and he was awesome in that. And I love seeing him in something again. I missed him so much. He's in a lot of his stuff was in the New Zealand because he's from New Zealand. So yeah, does a lot of acting parts in New Zealand. So it's not often we see something more mainstream from him. So to see him in now, it's just like, yes, thank God. But yeah, I really, really, I thought this movie was okay. The climax, I didn't think it was terrible, but the thing is, I knew what I was getting myself into going into this. I knew all the Stephen King tropes. I knew about the lame endings, the terrible twist, the infamous. And you see that's the thing when I watched the original Tim Curry review, the ending, when I saw, I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't invest that much in that movie. The ending sucks. And I saw this and like, it's better. I don't know. I kind of liked, because a lot of it fans, like, it does review his true form, but in this one he's kind of like, here's a little bit of it, but I'm still gonna be Pennywise. On one hand, I'm like, why didn't you go full board with the creature? I'm like, oh, the full board creature sucks. So I'm kind of glad they still kept a little bit of him, so it's still at least Pennywise. I will say the way they defeat him, how he's defeated, I like a lot. I do like that. And I will say I wasn't really shocked with who dies in these things because I knew about it far in advance. Because I knew what happened in the miniseries, like the Tim Curry one, and I knew that these movies were following the book as closely as possible. So I kind of knew what they were going to go for. I will say the one thing I think the one thing that this movie might have done, like I said, the one thing this movie did, I think that did better than the first chapter was tone consistency. Like the first movie just had a tone consistency issue that at times was pretty noticeable for me. And I don't usually notice those things that all the other critics notice when they're writing their detailed essays on how movies bad on like 80% of the shit that no common viewer would notice unless they watch it like 3 or 5 times. But if I notice it, then it's a problem. Hold on a sec. I gotta plug my laptop. All right, sorry about that. I'll end it quick here. This isn't supposed to be a long video anyway. But yeah, like I said, the biggest issue with the It Story portion is just so much better than the adult portion. The adult portion is just, well, the problem with the adult portion, really, based on my knowledge, is that it's just the same thing as the kid portion. Only the problem is that and the adults are just coming to fact to past fears and them coming up and how they relate to them today, while the kid fears while kid is much there's much more vulnerability. Like when you see a kid in danger, a kid that could die or could get hurt, it's much more disturbing because it's a kid. When it's adult, we don't really give a fuck because they lived a full life. They had their time. Who gives a shit, you know? When it's a kid, I mean, that's the opposite, and that's why it works so well with that as opposed to the freaking adult part. But for the adult part of the It Story, this was probably done the best it could have been done. I will say, I mean, the movie itself, I guess could have been a bit better. It could have been scarier. I think they could have done more. There's definitely intense scenes, don't get me wrong. There are scenes in this that I was on the edge of my seat. But the consistent sense of dread isn't quite there. Like because in the first chapter, I didn't know how accurate the source material was going to be, but after watching it, I realized, oh yeah, they're following this straight through. So I kind of knew for chapter 2, but chapter 1, I was like, man. But some of this stuff was done so well in that one. This one, a lot of them were, though, and the special effects were still good, but CGI was a bit more obvious, a bit more elaborate. In all honesty, I always love practical effects, especially with horror movies. So if they would have, I wish they could have found a few more practical effect tricks to throw in there instead of CG. But excuse me, but what do I know? I'm not a filmmaker. Okay, but overall, yeah, yeah, pretty much the first one. Sorry, I lost it. I'm gonna end this quick here. But overall, I like the first one a bit better because it's much more consistently not just has horror elements, but intense dread. That's the key, at least for me, for a good horror movie is dread, and that movie had a few dread moments. This one, not as much, but But yeah, I'm gonna stop it there. I'm just gonna say it's a good movie. Check it out if it's still in theaters. October's still coming up, so I might do the next movie theater reviews. Is going to be the Joker movie. I'm definitely seeing the Joker movie, so keep an eye out for that. And yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the videos, and have a good day.